You know, there's this invisible force at play right now, quietly making a lot of us feel poorer. And the crazy part is, most people don't even see it happening. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden reason why.
Does this feel familiar? You're putting in the hours, you're doing everything you're supposed to, but it just feels like you're on a treadmill, running faster and faster just to stay on the same spot. Savings don't stretch as far, and those big life goals, like buying a house, they just seem to be getting further away. Look, if you feel this way, you're not alone. And it's definitely not just in your head.
We're usually taught to think of inflation as something that just happens. You know, like bad weather. It's random, it affects everyone, but it's fair. But what if it isn't? What if the whole system is designed in a way that, by its very nature, benefits some people at the expense of almost everyone else?
To really get this, we have to look at the order that new money enters the economy. See, it's not random at all. There's a very specific, predictable path it follows, and that path has been making the wealth gap wider for centuries. It's one of the fundamental rules of the financial game that most of us were never taught.
So, to understand what's going on with your money today, we actually have to go back in time. Because this isn't some new problem. It's a secret that the inside players, bankers and economists, have known about for almost 300 years.
So let me introduce you to Richard Cantillon. Back in the mid-1700s, this guy asked a simple but absolutely brilliant question that nobody else was really thinking about. When a government creates new money, who gets to spend it first? And his discovery was so huge, it helps explain pretty much every major economic boom and bust ever since. And you can see just how relevant his idea still is. I mean, from way back in 1755 all the way to the 2008 financial crisis, and especially with the huge response to the pandemic in 2020. This effect has only gotten stronger and faster with digital money and global central banks. So what was Cantillon's big discovery? It was shockingly simple. The people who are closest to the source of new money, you can think of it as the money printer, they get to spend it before it messes up the economy. They get the upside. Everybody else who gets that same money way later, well, they lose.
All right, so let's bring this into our modern world. How does a 300-year-old idea work today when money isn't made on a printing press, but with a few clicks on a keyboard?
Okay, let's use 2020 as a perfect example. Central banks create trillions of digital dollars out of thin air. But here's the thing, that money doesn't just show up in everyone's bank account at once. Nope. Step one, it goes to the massive financial institutions. Now the key here is timing. They get this fresh cash when prices for everything are still low. So what do? They immediately buy up assets, stocks, real estate, entire companies. Then that money slowly starts to trickle down into the rest of the economy. But by the time it finally reaches you, in your paycheck or your savings, the prices of everything have already been pushed sky high.
And this chart just lays it out perfectly. If you get the money first, it has its full buying power. You're basically shopping for assets at yesterday's prices. But if you get it last, that same money is already weaker. It's been devalued. Now you're stuck facing today's inflated prices for a house or a car. One group is literally generating wealth, while the other is losing their purchasing power. And that, right there, is the heart of it. The Cantillon Effect is really just an invisible transfer of wealth. It's a system that quietly shifts value away from people who earn a wage, trading their time for money, and moves it to those who own the things that go up in price because of all that new money.
Okay, so this isn't just some abstract theory. Let's look at the cold, hard evidence, the numbers that show exactly how this has played out in the real world, especially over the last decade or so.
So get this, between 2008 and 2024, the amount of money in the US system went from about $2 trillion to almost $20 trillion. That is an absolutely staggering amount of new money flooding the economy. Now, if that money were spread out evenly, we should all be richer, right? Well, that's not quite what happened.
And here's the punchline. This slide shows what happened as a result of all that money creation. In that exact same time frame, the wealth of the top 0.1% of Americans more than tripled. That's a 200% jump. And the bottom 50% of the country, their wealth went up by just 12%. It's pretty clear where all that new money ended up flowing.
And here's the other side of the coin, which makes it even tougher. When you adjust for inflation, the actual spending power of an average worker's salary has barely moved in 30 years. People are working just as hard, if not harder, but their labor is buying them less and less, while the price of assets just keeps soaring further out of reach.
Okay, so the system clearly has a bias.
And look, knowing this can be pretty frustrating, but giving up is exactly what the system banks on. Instead, the most powerful first step is to simply understand the rules of the game you're in.
What that really means is shifting from thinking only like an employee to thinking more like an owner. See, an employee trades their time for dollars, and those dollars lose value over time because of inflation. An owner, on the other hand, holds assets, things like stocks, a piece of real estate, or a business, which tend to go up in value as the currency gets weaker. The whole focus changes from just earning an income to actually building wealth. At the end of the day, the goal is to own a piece of the pie. It doesn't have to be some huge portfolio. Just owning a small slice of an asset is how you put yourself on the winning side of this equation. And remember, this is not about blaming yourself for falling behind. It's about understanding that the game is tilted and then figuring out how to position yourself to play it smarter.
The Cantillon Effect has been at work for nearly 300 years, quietly moving wealth around. It's not going anywhere. But the difference is, now you see it. You understand the hidden rules of the system. So the only question left is, knowing what you know now, what are you going to do differently?